So as you all know, I have, it feels like I've just crawled out of a space, but of, I don't know, 4 or 5 days being quite ill with the flu. Sicker than I've been in actually quite a few years, in terms of just being incapable of willing myself physically beyond what the bug would do or allow me to do. And so having a great deal of time to watch my mind, too sick to read completely, couldn't focus to do that, and really, so even listening to teachings, or although I could at times, that faded. So, you know, just a lot of time to really see what was going on in the mind. And it was a very inspiring experience in terms of motivating practice. Because what I could see is that when I had some bit of energy, I actually could keep an eye on what my thoughts were doing, and if I felt like they were turning in a direction that wasn't so wholesome, to really apply the mind to practices. And there's lots of practices you can do when you're sick. Certainly we're trained to, as much as possible, to do the taking and giving meditation, and to take on the suffering of all the beings who are also lying flat on their back and can't move, and to give them all our happiness and virtue. And we can think about the karmic causes and purifying all the negative actions of the past, and, you know, working in that way. We can spend time just thinking about the nature of samsara, and how especially the taking on bodies that we acquire through our karma and afflictions is a cause of just really gross suffering that I'm experiencing right now, and using that to fuel our determination to be free and so forth. So there's lots of things you can do with your mind when you're sick. It's a very productive practice time. But what I also could see is that when I didn't have much energy, when I didn't have enough energy to hang on to it, where did my mind go? Sometimes it was just a stupor, of course, which was not so virtuous. But it also could easily slide into self-pity kinds of things. Not that I'm so sick and I'm so miserable, but old hurts, old kind of emotional pain that I didn't even know was still there from silly little minor cuts, not intended by anybody, but watching my mind go into a kind of a old, really old habit of reflecting on those kinds of hurts, and then coming up with a story about, oh, I'm not really appreciated, and then there was enough awareness in my consciousness to look at that and go, look at that. But I couldn't do anything to change it, because in that moment I just didn't have the energy, or I'd be slipping right off to sleep or something like that. So the thing that is the great motivation, that's the tremendous fuel, of course, is to recognize how deep our habits are. And as everyone who's been watching BBC knows, as we've been supporting our friend Don Wackerly up through the time of his death, of course that was also very present in my mind. And so making it really obvious how aware, how deeply habituated to kindness and compassion we must be if our mind is going to, and we have no control whatsoever. If we want our mind to habitually go to a virtuous thought, I have some work to do. I have some serious work to do. We talked last night at the class in Sandpoint about some of the motivations for doing Dharma practice. And the initial scope motivation is to practice in order to have a good rebirth. We've spent a lot of our energy supporting Don to have a good death. that his mind would be clear, that his mind would be filled with compassion, that his mind would not go to self-pity or hurt or anger or whatever. And so if my only motivation is to have a good rebirth, then I have to have a strong motivation to have a good death. That's got to be the motivation of my practice at that scope. So of course I also want to develop the motivation that understands that I have the possibility, every one of us has the possibility to be free of cyclic existence altogether, and to use that to fuel my practice. That I can be, even that I can recognize my own potential to become completely enlightened, and for the benefit of every being to set that as my goal. But in a very immediate, personal, moment by moment, kind of tangible practice right now, I can see that I need to practice and want to practice for a good death. So that if I have, of course, I'm surrounded by Dharma friends at the time of my death, and they're chanting mantra and they are reminding me where to put my mind, that will be really sweet. But if I'm driving down a freeway with someone and a truck goes across that center lane, as I see that truck driver's face about to smash into mine and in my life, that my mind rises up with love and compassion and not hatred for the idiot who crossed that line. So having seen that, where my mind goes in the last few days, I don't know that I would not be in a rage if that happened. I do not know that. And so I'm just re-inspired and want to re-inspire everyone to think about all day long, where is our mind? What are we thinking about? Where are we going? And how do we cultivate the seeds of compassion, the seeds of love, the seeds of wishing to have a warm-hearted regard for every being, the seeds of kindness? How do we do that? We follow all the meditations as they're so clearly outlined in developing bodhicitta. And we use that as our mantra. We use that as our way of being, and we, as much as we can, create a habit of mind that someday, maybe not this life, but someday, there is a habit so strong that even when we're completely ill, completely dying, all of our physical things are absorbing into each other, and our mind is about to float free into the universe, or that's not true, when our mind is about to proceed moment by moment by moment into the next experience, that our minds are still filled with love and compassion, and that those are the seeds that create our next rebirth, and our next opportunity to practice, and the next rebirth, and the next opportunity to practice, and the next rebirth, and the next opportunity to practice, until we are completely enlightened Buddhas and have the capacity to benefit all beings. So that's the fruit of the flu, and I hope it helps you too.